Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show, not our typical Wednesday show. We did that one on Tuesday, and this is more like our Thursday show, but it's on Wednesday because Thanksgiving is coming up on Thursday, and we're thankful for all of you, the Pewter people, as we talk about a fun episode today. Todd Bowles and the Bowlers versus Dave Canales and the Canal Pals. Who prevails in Carolina? It's actually the Bucs versus the Panthers, but obviously a lot of details, a lot of influence from Todd Bowles and the Bowlers and Dave Canales and the Canal Pals. So we'll talk about that matchup. We'll talk about what we saw from the Bucs facility today. We were at practice. We spoke to a handful of coaches, a handful of players, and we spoke to each other because we like each other as colleagues, and it's a good time when all the Pewter reporters are together. So I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from PewterReport.com. He's a co-host as well on these shows. It is Adam Slavon. Adam, good yuntif. How's it going?
Matt, it's going great, and I always love hearing your introductions. I was wondering how long you were going to keep that welcome going, but happy Thanksgiving Eve to all the Pewter people out there watching. I think the Canal Pals, there's something there. You can make that work.
Yeah, I feel like I may have used it last year at some point. Maybe I didn't, but I had that on the mind. I came up with Canal Pals first, and I was like, well, what do you call like Todd Bowles and his group? But the Bowlers just kind of makes perfect sense with his last name. So the Bowlers versus the Canal Pals.
Yeah, and did want to say, with it being Thanksgiving, I thought it was very topical that today there was more of a get-together at One Buck Place with Liam Cohen, Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield, Casey Rogers. Everybody was talking. And instead of passing around sides at the table, a lot of the guys there were kind of talking about their favorite sides and Thanksgiving. So I think it's going to be a great show today and kind of talking about the matchup between Bowles and Canales because, Matt, there's so much familiarity between the two of them.
There is, and this is one of the first times really in Todd Bowles' career that, and Bowles has spoken about, and he spoke today about that, you know, it's not the first time like he's gone up against someone else that he's coached with before. But if you look at the history of Todd Bowles, with him being a head coach with the Jets, he's never gone up against like a former Jets offensive coordinator that worked with him. So it is the first time that he's really going up against someone that he's worked with, but on the offensive side, that is calling plays now against him. And it's not just like, you know, practice of Todd's defense against Dave Canales' offense. Unless Bruce Arians gets decides to come out of retirement and get a head coaching job somewhere else, this is really the only time that Bowles will have this situation, unless, dare I say, Liam Cohen gets a head coaching job somewhere else and Todd Bowles keeps his job and, you know, they end up clashing. But we'll worry about that down the road and see what happens for the rest of this season and for next season as well. But yeah, I think this is a very fun matchup. Like, yeah, the Panthers are a bad team record-wise, but they've played quite well the past couple of weeks. The Bucs, we think, are starting to turn a corner, but we can't definitively say it just yet. Like, they only won one game. They haven't, you know, gone on this crazy 5 or 6 or 7 game winning streak just yet. So I wonder what we're going to get in this game. And we'll talk a lot about the Bucs offense against the Panthers defense, but at least for the beginning of the show, like, are we going to get the best of Todd Bowles' defense? Are we going to get the best of Dave Canales' offense, or the worst of Dave Canales' offense and the worst of Todd Bowles' defense? Because we've seen a little bit of both of that in their tenures in Tampa and certainly with Canales a little bit in Carolina. But, man, should be certainly a more intriguing matchup of Bucs versus Panthers that we've had in a while, outside of like, hey, the Bucs need to win this game to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when you kind of look at the Panthers right now, hey, they're playing some good football. They had 2 wins. They gave the Chiefs quite a fight, came down to a last-second field goal. But when you look at the Panthers team, specifically the offensive side of the ball, that's Dave Canales' domain, Bryce Young has played really impressive football. And if you look up Bryce Young on X, there's a video of his film against the Chiefs where he was like the highest graded player on the Panthers squad. And you kind of look at his ability to make throws, very mobile in the pocket, has that pocket presence and the ability to extend plays. Todd Bowles and Casey Rogers, they kind of spoke today about the challenges of containing Bryce Young. And the Bucs, while they had his number last year, I mean, you have the Canales effect this year, where after he was on the bench for a few games, kind of watched Andy Dalton, he's looked like a different quarterback, and he's been able to take care of the football, and he's kind of doing it with interesting cast of weapons around him. You have the one-time Buccaneer David Moore at wide receiver, Jalen Coker, the undrafted free agent. He's kind of making some plays. And then Xavier Leggett and Jatavian Sanders, both rookies. Young has been able to have success, like kind of unexpectedly in the past few weeks. I don't know how you see it, Matt, but that can pose some challenges, especially you also have Chuba Hubbard to contain as well.
Yes. I think that's really been the biggest reason why Bryce Young has found more success is the benefit of having the run game and Chuba Hubbard. Like Chuba's almost at 900 rushing yards. So as long as he could stay healthy, there's never that guarantee. But if he could stay healthy, he could have pedestrian games for, the rest of the season. And he's still going to get 1,000 yards. So I really think a big part of the success of Bryce Young has been Chuba Hubbard. They just got their rookie running back as well. So we haven't even fully seen the total damage that, he can do. And a credit to Dave Canales. You mentioned David Moore. Canales, even though, there are certain issues that we don't like about his offense and what he did here in Tampa, Canales, and you can go back to his time with the Seahawks and Geno Smith. Maybe it's him being a positivity bully, as Baker Mayfield called him today, but he just finds a way to tap into the best of the abilities of even, pedestrian type of players. Like David Moore. If it wasn't for Dave Canales, David Moore might not be in the league anymore. Yeah. He really might. And I don't mean that as like a negative thing to David Moore, but, Moore's in Tampa last season because of Dave Canales. And what does he do? He rewards him with, a big touchdown against the Packers, a big touchdown in the playoffs against the Eagles. And then he scored last week as well to tie the game up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Devin Tompkins is another guy that, maybe probably wouldn't have panned out with the Bucs necessarily anyway, but gets another chance, another opportunity with Dave Canales. And you see the guy in the corner of this picture here, Adam Thielen, he just came off of injured reserve as well. So this is another weapon that, sure, he's been in the league for a very long time. He was on Carolina last year as well. There is tape on him. But he just returned last week, so it brings in another weapon for Carolina. And, I'm not going to sit here and say, we haven't seen an offense like this since Tyreek Hill was on the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. It's clearly not that by any means. But the more that Bryce Young continues to gain confidence with the help of Dave Canales, the more it becomes a threat to the Buccaneers, who have made other really bad quarterbacks look really good. The Bucs passed the test, obviously, with Tommy DeVito, not allowing him to find that Tommy Cutlet's magic one last time and get that lightning in a bottle. They'll have to continue it against Carolina because I think Carolina is playing inspired football right now and certainly taking on the identity of who we've come to know about Dave Canales.
Yeah, and I think schematically when you look at their offense, so last year at the Bucs, they had a dead last run game, right? But this year, when you look at the Panthers, with Hubbard, he's like 5th in the league in rushing yards. They've been able to have a lot of success on the ground, and kind of that carryover with Harold Goodwin and Joe Gilbert, that's helped out. And the familiarity of like just the player personnel, like you mentioned, David Moore, Devin Tompkins, having all that around him, I think they've really been able to have a successful run game this year. And so when you look at the Bucs defense, that's going to present a lot of challenges. And their offensive line, they made some big investments over the offseason, kind of beefing up the offensive line, and they've played pretty well. They have 2 bookend tackles. The interior offensive line, they've been pretty stout. That's also going to pose some challenges.
It certainly is, Adam. So, we spoke to Todd Bowles and Casey Rogers today, and they had kind of mentioned that it's not necessarily the game plan when it comes to going up against Canales and what's going to go on. It's more of the personnel matchups on each side. So when it comes to Todd Bowles and his defense and Dave Canales and the offense that he wants to run, who do you kind of give the advantage in on paper? Obviously, things change in the game itself, but on paper, who do you think this favors?
I would still say the Bucs, and just on the aspect of it being player matchups, at the end of the day, no matter how well you know each other's scheme, it comes down to players executing, going out there and performing. I still think in the talent department, the Bucs have a big advantage. The Panthers obviously have some talent on the defensive side of the ball. Liam Cohen today, he mentioned J.C. Horn, Jadeveon Clowney. He had 1.5 sacks against the Chiefs. There's still talent there, but when you look at the Bucs offense, I don't think they're going to have many problems keeping up their high scoring ways. And then defensively, this is a measuring stick game for me defensively when you look at it, because Canales in his offense, he's shown he's an above average play caller. How will the Bucs defense be able to really keep up? I mean, they beat Tommy DeVito, a third string quarterback, but before that, we're all too familiar with all the 30-point games the Bucs defense is giving up.
Yes.
Without Jordan Whitehead, will Mike Edwards be able to hold his own? Will other guys be able to stay healthy, like Tyke Smith, Joe Tryon-Schwenka? Will those guys play? I think defensively, they need a big game, especially with Bryce Young playing the way he is.
I think those are some really good points. As far as like certain matchups and things like that, I think the Bucs offense has a clear, huge advantage over the Panthers defense. And we can kind of talk about that in a little bit. When it comes to Bowles and the defense against Canales and the offense, talent-wise, the advantage is still the Buccaneers on defense. You still have Winfield. It's amazing what Kalijah Cansey is doing. Vita Vea is the best two-way player since Deion Sanders. I kid. But there's still good talent there. There's still good pieces. The cornerbacks as well. Zion McCollum, Jamel Dean when he's healthy. But part of me, I can't help but think, and sure, some of this might be dictated on Canales and the Panthers run the football against the Bucs defense, which is possible. We saw the Chiefs do it pretty well. The Giants didn't, but of course they were down by a lot as well. But if I'm Dave Canales, I'm going to Bryce Young and just being like, listen, Bryce, be patient. The Bucs are going to play a lot of zone, and you'll be able to find the open guy. Now, that has been the issue, as you just pointed out, with those 30-point performances, with some of the other quarterbacks. But the pressure has gotten better the past couple of weeks because of Vita Vea and because of Kalijah Cansey. So if the Panthers are able to limit them or hold on to the blitzes that are inevitably are going to come with Todd Bowles, I don't think it matters about the personnel because Bowles will play zone. He'll be afraid of allowing the big play. And there might be an advantage that Dave Canales obviously knows and is familiar with and will be able to exploit a little bit to a degree. Now, can Bowles adjust and find other ways to get stops? For sure. Absolutely. I actually think as well, we've seen a lot, not as much this season, but a lot last year with Baker. How many times Baker would get the ball tipped at the line of scrimmage, just knocked down? Well, you could say the same thing for Bryce Young. Yeah. So this might be a game where like Logan Hall is a little bit more important than he is in other weeks because Logan Hall is just, a gigantic human being with a big time wingspan where he might be able to, knock down some throws by Bryce Young. So it's interesting because Canales, I still think, has room to grow as an overall, offensive play caller. He's only been doing this for a little bit. On paper, the advantage still is clearly to the Buccaneers, even on the defensive side. But I think the big question on top of everything I just kind of mentioned is, was the performance against the Giants last week a blip on the radar from the Bucs defense, or is this something that can continue week in and week out? Because we also have to remember they went more dime package. They have Mike Edwards. They're still going to be able, if Tyke Smith can play, and we'll see about that, but if Tyke Smith can play, you can still use a lot of dime. I'm not ready to say the Bucs defense is back just yet because it was the worst offense in the league with the Giants. But if they can win this, it's tough because it's Carolina and then it's Vegas. So I don't know if we'll still have our answer in 2 weeks from now, but they have to at least build on top of it with this game against Carolina.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there in that they need to build, because when you look at where the team is at currently, you still don't know what their true identity is. Are they that team that's going to lose close games every single week and have those late game mistakes? Or are they able to beat top tier teams. They did it early in the season, but then they floundered. Beating the Giants, while it's a great win, like for team morale, I'd argue like how much it actually really means in the big picture, because
Yes.
you're beating a team that has a dead last offense that defensively, besides their pass rush, they pose no threat in the secondary. So it was beating up on
Right.
a bad team. The Panthers, while they still might be a 3-8 team, kind of be a bad team, they're a team that has some fight in them. And that's why when we kind of talked about the round table with the trap games,
Yes.
this is the one that I picked, because what the Canales factor, and like how much will that play a role? And with the play of Bryce Young, Chuba Hubbard, the fact that they still have some guys defensively that can make plays. I mean, you look at last year, when the Bucs and Panthers played, the Panthers had a very similar kind of defense. They held the Bucs to 21 points and 9 points. I mean, if it's tough sledding for the offense, it can make it a really interesting game, and a game where the Panthers might be able to pull it off.
Yeah, it'll be nerve-wracking as well, because the Bucs
Yeah.
know they have to win out, and they know like this is the easier part of their schedule. Where right now the Panthers, they got nothing to lose. You
No.
know, like they're out of the playoff race. They're just working on. Listen, it's not a great spot to be in, because you'd rather be fighting for the playoffs or in a
Yeah.
playoff spot and contending for a Super Bowl. But for Bryce Young, Xavier Leggett, Hubbard, who just got the contract extension, all of that, and a couple of pieces on defense. Again, I'm not saying the Panthers are in a good spot, but it's not the worst spot to be like, for teams that aren't making the playoffs. It's not the worst spot to be like, listen, we had no expectations this season. Let's just work on ourselves and play inspiring football, games that we can kind of, be proud of, even if the end result doesn't go your way. And if they can play spoiler to a team like the Bucs, to really everyone in the NFC South, with the Falcons and stuff like that too, maybe some other teams that they end up playing. I mean, hell, they almost beat the Chiefs
Yeah.
a week ago. By the way, also kind of random. So Panthers played the Chiefs, then play the Bucs. The Raiders play on Friday against the Chiefs and then go and play the Bucs. So the Chiefs are helping out Tampa Bay a little bit, just hopefully beating up on the opponents that the Bucs are going to play next. But the overall tenacity and mentality of Dave Canales, and that's a big difference with the Giants game. And I think you made a really good point. Like the Giants, as we've seen in the tabloids and the media this week, they are very close to losing the locker room if they haven't already lost the locker room.
They've kind of
very
thrown
much
in the
sounds
towel.
like they have. And like the Giants, I think if you were to compare the Giants and the Panthers, the best skill position player out of either of those teams is Malik Neighbors. But if you take the sum of the whole parts, I think the Panthers have overall better skill players than the Giants do, albeit the Giants have the best of the group with Malik Neighbors. So for the Bucs, they knew against New York it was stop Tyrone Tracy and then obviously limit Malik Neighbors. And when Neighbors didn't get a target until the third quarter, well, you kind of already accomplished the goal that you wanted to have because you were up by so much. And the Panthers don't have their leading receiver has over 300 yards. Like Mike Evans has had more than that before he even came back, for Sunday's game. So the Panthers will find different ways to, stay in the game relatively. So that's why I think it's important, very much so, for the Bucs to build a lead early on in this game. Don't give Carolina any type of hope, and maybe you'll be able to ease your way into a win versus sweating it out at the end.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like the Panthers' leading receiver. On the season, it's still Deontay Johnson, who was traded to the Ravens like a month ago. But there's a quote from Casey Rogers today that I kind of wanted to share on the topic of Bowles versus Canales. So Rogers was asked about facing Dave Canales and how that changes the game plan. And he said, and quote, "It doesn't make it any easier. The thing we know with Dave being here and being able to practice against him is when you watch them play, it's not really the same system. It's the same system, but it's dressed a lot differently than it was here. From our standpoint, you can try to look at it and say, how are they using the people the way he used the people here? We're looking at more of the matchups because the system is going to be the system." And that kind of speaks to what we talked about in terms of the matchups. But I don't know how much of a true factor that is, having Canales go up against Bowles, because at the end of the day, every year there's different terminology, different plays. And with the way that the Bucs offense catered with Canales to how the Panthers are kind of building around him now, it's going to be different. So I think it's going to be an intriguing matchup, like storyline wise. But at the end of the day, they still have to go out there and they still have to play.
Right. And, Todd Bowles knew where Dave Canales was going. He knew that he was going to have to face him twice a year. So I'm sure he long ago had adjusted to, okay, well, when we play Canales, we're going to have some different look. I'm sure in this game, there's going to be something on each side for the Bucs and the Panthers that hasn't been shown on tape yet in other games because they know that they know each other.
Yeah.
So I think that very much can be true and will be the case. Want to get to some comments. Appreciate everybody that is joining us. We know it is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. People are getting their food for tomorrow, getting drinks, all that type of stuff. So thanks to everybody for rocking with us. We also have a couple of new Pewter Report YouTube channel members.
Awesome.
So shout out to Tom Whiffen. Thank you so much for joining
Tom.
us. And then we have two from Curtis Morals Davis. Thank you so much for being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. Just a reminder for Pewter Premier and Platinum members, we will not be having a Pewter Insider on Friday because, it's Thanksgiving and, the aftermath of Thanksgiving as well. So no Pewter Insider this Friday, but we will resume with it the following Friday. So enjoy the football, enjoy times with your family and a little time off, and we'll be back at it. On the topic of Thanksgiving, Zach Jarvis says, hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thankful for Pewter Report. You guys are the best.
Thank you, Zach.
Christopher Cole says, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Let's go Bucs. Richard Taroka says, hey, Matt and Sly, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you all so much for your kind words. We hope you have the best Thanksgiving as well. A happy Thanksgiving. And we are super grateful for all of you for joining us on a weekly basis. You guys come out every single time, whether it's me and Scott, whether it's Scott and Adam, or Adam and myself right now, and Bailey and Josh and other people that we've had on the show. So your guys and gals support means everything to us. So thank you very, very much for that. And then also, Il Tadre says, first time being able to catch it live from the beginning, enjoying the show with a cigar. Hell yeah. That is awesome.
The way to do
Hope
it.
you're enjoying it. Hope you're having a great time. I enjoy a nice cigar from time to time as well. So, hope it burns very, very long, unless you like some of the shorter cigars. Sometimes I do if I'm golfing. So it's a little bit of a quick hit. And Mr. Wright _1 says, I wish we re-signed more. He would have made more plays than McMillan or Palmer when Evans was out. That's interesting. That's that would be a curious one to navigate because you got to remember it'd be a different system that David Moore would be in. Trey Palmer also was hurt for a little bit with that concussion. He did come back by the time Evans was out for a little bit. I wonder where Moore would have factored in.
Yeah, because Sterling Shepard kind of took his role.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like, does Sterling Shepard even get signed if David Moore is here?
Yeah. Interesting to think about, though, but I don't know how much of a role he really would have had. I
think they would have just bumped it up. Like McMillan would have been still up there if he wasn't injured, and then it probably would have been – they probably would have gone with Palmer before Moore, but who knows? It's just something to think about. Another thing to think about a lot is what Celsius energy drink am I going to have? Because there's so many awesome flavors of Celsius. My personal favorite is the Arctic vibe, like the tropical as well. You can check out some of the new flavors like the sparkling watermelon lemonade. And if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, you can go to the Celsius store locator on their website. Punch in your address and tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Might be a Walmart, a health and fitness store, 7-Eleven, a Publix, or a Stop and Shop, or just could be your local bodega. And after you love Celsius because you go to the local bodega, everyone knows you're a regular, and they're like, you're the Celsius person. You're like, damn right I am. I'm colleagues with Juan Soto. And you love Celsius and you want more and you want to get it in bulk. You can over on Amazon. With the subscribe and save, I'd recommend getting the variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors of Celsius, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. And while we're on the topic of awesome things, we want to talk about some awesome people as well. So thank you so much to all of our Pewter Platinum members for being a YouTube channel member. So thank you to Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, and Zach Jarvis. Thank you.
Thank you
all so much for being a Pewter Platinum member. We appreciate your support very, very much. And thanks for enjoying the show. As always, as Jeff the Champ says, drinking a strawberry lemonade right now. That's what I'm saying, Jeff the Champ. That's what we love to see. Christopher Cole as well says, 84 watching and just 13 likes. Come on, Pewter people, hit that like button. We'd appreciate if you can do that. Thumbs up, just takes 2 seconds. And, you can be on your merry way. Before we talk about the offense, Adam, I think it's important to get to the injury report as well. Let me pull that up real quick. It was a walkthrough today, so again, take it all with a grain of salt. And Todd Bowles had mentioned that there were a couple people that would have been designated or an estimation, that would not have practiced today. But here was the injury report. Mike Evans, hamstring, practice in full. Again, this is all estimations. Will Golston, knee, full. Troy Hill, ankle/foot, did not practice. Tyke Smith, knee, did not practice. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, ankle, did not practice. Marquise Watts, he was actually, they just opened up the window for his return from injured reserve. So he has essentially 3 weeks to come back off of injured reserve, which kind of plays into the Shaq Barrett thing a little bit. Yeah. Jordan Whitehead Peck did not participate, and Tristan Wirfs was limited, with a knee and foot. So I think the two biggest things from this specifically, Adam, is Tyke Smith and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and Marquise Watts to a degree. Because if Tyke Smith is available, it allows the Bucs to do a lot more on defense. It allows to take KJ Britt off the field and go with more of a dime package. And, of course, you get your starting slot corner returning. Of course, the other one is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, because even though fans aren't in love with his production and what he's done with the team, he has been the starter for this season and for a couple of years now. So I would say those two are probably the biggest things to take away from that practice. With it being a walkthrough, I think Tristan Wirfs becomes more of a story tomorrow and Friday's practice specifically.
Yeah, as far as today, I would have to agree with those two guys. And when you look at Tyke Smith, I'm very interested to see how he fits on the defense when he comes back, because now with Mike Edwards, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Tyke Smith, those are three playmaking defensive backs. And so you'd have to expect with those three, Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean, I mean, the secondary on paper, Matt, it looks like above average. I mean, you have an all-pro free safety. Tyke Smith has been playing really well as a rookie. 2 above average corners. Really want to see how that gels together, because they really haven't seen the field together that much this year. And then when you look at Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and the fact that maybe some Bucs fans aren't pleased with him not living up to being a first-round pick, I mean, he's still played a lot better than maybe a guy like Anthony Nelson this year. And although he really hasn't made many sacks, he's at least been serviceable. And he's been an average player, and they've kind of needed him at times in terms of run defense.
Yeah, I think JTS has been fine when it comes to stopping the run. Anthony Nelson, oddly enough, becomes the leader in sacks as far as outside linebackers go. He has 3, JTS has 2, and so does Yaya Diaby. It is crazy that Anthony Nelson just finds himself in these situations where, there's a missed block or the ball comes near him and he's able to get it. I'm not saying he's just lucky. Obviously, work is put into even get to this level, but sometimes Anthony Nelson has been the beneficiary of certain things. Jordan Whitehead, and we got this question from Pewter 941, Whitehead to injured reserve. So other reports came out nationally that he's not going to need surgery, which is good, and he's not going to be out for the year, but it's not known at this moment how long he's going to be out for. So will they end up putting him on injured reserve? Who knows? That could happen during this podcast. It could happen, maybe tomorrow, Friday, or something like that. But if the Bucs feel that Whitehead could get back, by the fourth game, or, I guess after the third game, by the fourth
Yeah.
game is the same thing. But I want to phrase this the right way, because I think Jordan Whitehead's a good player. I think he struggled because of not just the pec injury, but, he's kind of been dealing with injuries all season long. Whitehead at times has not made the plays that we've wanted to see from him, really since like week 2.
Yeah.
So I don't want injuries for Jordan Whitehead. I feel bad that he's going to be out for a little bit. But if you let Jordan Whitehead get fully healthy, even if it's like his pec is healed, but maybe he needs another week for everything else that's going on with him, I am optimistic and a little looking forward to if Tyke Smith can get healthy enough. Tyke Smith, Antoine Winfield Jr., Christian Isium, who's played great and was fantastic at MetLife Stadium against the Giants, plus the 2 corners with Zion and Jamel Dean, and of course Mike Edwards in the mix. That might be currently the best secondary group that the Bucs can come up with, just dealing with overall up and down play, injuries, everything else in between. That might be kind of the best scenario for the Bucs at the moment. That doesn't mean that they should get rid of Jordan Whitehead, that they don't need him, because they certainly do. But just given where he is injury-wise, given where his performance has been, I don't mind taking a look at this other option with some of the guys that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I would agree. And when you kind of look at Jordan Whitehead, and in terms of like the first 2 weeks of the season, I remember doing a story about how he was like the Bucs' best free agent signing. He played really well. He was a sure tackler, the team's leading tackler through 2 games. But you kind of wonder if injuries kind of played a factor. Like you could look at Antoine Winfield Jr., maybe it did the same. Maybe both those guys really haven't been operating at 100% this year. But with Jordan Whitehead kind of taking some time off, maybe resetting, because he's kind of been disappointing in the last like half of the season, but there's still a lot of talent there. There's a reason that the team re-signed him, brought him back, because he's a very physical player. And paired with a guy like Antoine Winfield Jr., on paper, that's a really good 1-2 safety duo. It just hasn't really come to fruition, but you still like the player. You still hope that he can kind of turn it around later in the season. But the pectoral injury, that's a tough one, right? Because even if you come back, I mean, you're still going to be playing through pain. And that, like when he hit Tommy DeVito at the goal line there, he ran off the field quickly. Like he knew something was wrong. And that's something like that's an injury you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, for those wrestling fans out there, there's a Hell in a Cell match between Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. And Cody Rhodes injured his pec like the day before the match. He was just lifting. So his entire right side was like black and blue, and it looked insane. So it was crazy, and he ended up winning the match. But anyway, but yeah, Jordan Whitehead like immediately like put his arm kind of like,
he like
if,
tucked it.
He had if he had a sling over it. So yeah, that's not going to be easy. However, like after speaking to Mike Edwards today, remember Edwards came close to getting an interception. Against the Giants, he came very close. He was guarding Malik Neighbors. And he even said, like, at first I was hesitant. Just, you're getting back into it with this new defense and stuff. And like, as the game went on, I kind of knew, like, when I could jump certain things, when I can kind of be a little bit more aggressive and take advantage of stuff. And, he said he came close. So, I don't know. And it was an incomplete pass anyway. But I just had that feeling Mike Edwards is going to make a play. He just is that ball hawking guy, and he makes a lot of great stuff happen. By the way, another great thing, Timothy Fitzgerald has now been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for 3 months. So thank you so much, Timothy, for your support of Pewter Report, who goes on to say, Baker was hurt in both games last year, ankle, ribs. Yeah, that was a big-time storyline, especially that last game of the season where Baker was like certainly hobbled,
gutting it out,
could not move much. Crazy how he was able to bounce back for the playoff game against the Eagles. But yeah, that game was 9-0. Baker very much did not look good. But remember, he savored it because he was in that same stadium when he was told he was going to get let go by the Panthers. And then, went to the Rams and went to the Bucs. We all know how that went. So now it's maybe not a fully healthy Baker because we know the style that Baker plays. But
running downfield to make blocks.
Yeah, it's a healthier Baker Mayfield that we will be watching in Charlotte when the Bucs take on the Panthers. Of course, we're going to have the Pewter pregame show that will start at 9 o'clock. It'll be myself and Scott Reynolds. We'll look at some of the more individual matchups in the game as we preview it. So please, if you can, join us at 9 a.m. It'll be live. So any questions and comments we'll get to as well in the game. And then, of course, if you can't join us live, because we understand, it's your morning, maybe you're busy doing something else, whatever the case may be, it'll be right on our YouTube channel. And with this being a 4 o'clock game, you got plenty of time to listen to the preview game. You could do it at 12 o'clock. You can do it at 2 o'clock. Doesn't matter. Either way, it'll be on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, after that, it'll be our Pewter Game Day show taking place at kickoff for Bucs versus Panthers at 4:05. Josh Capo will be at the game. He will be live from Charlotte, so he will not be on the show. So Adam's going to join us for a little bit. Adam's been on before, so you're used to doing this, but very much looking forward to having you back on as we will react to everything going on in the game. That'll be Bucs versus Panthers at 4:05. So should be a fun time. Everybody hopefully will be in good spirits after a fun, couple of days off with Thanksgiving and everything like that, and college football rivalry week and all that stuff. So very much looking forward to it. But sticking with the offense and Baker Mayfield, Adam, what are you looking for in this matchup for Tampa Bay's offense to truly, truly pull away from Carolina?
Yeah, I think that's kind of continuing the balance. So Baker Mayfield today, one thing that really stuck out to me was that he said that he's been in the most balanced offense that he's really played in. And I think you kind of see that and how successful they've been, because when you have a guy like Bucky Irving pictured there, who he's been a true dynamic back for this team, averaging 5.5 yards per carry, bringing some juice in the receiving game, had a career high in receptions and receiving yards, continuing to find ways to involve him and just allow him to do the rest. Like, you could throw a short pass to Bucky Irving and he could turn it across the field and go 32 yards like he did against the Giants. And so I think when it comes down to the offense and being successful, making the most of the matchups. So Mike Evans, he'll be guarded by J.C. Horn, who is a very good corner, and that's going to be a tough matchup. So maybe finding, like, Mike opens up the offense, but finding ways to get other playmakers involved. And because there's opportunities to take advantage of the Panthers defense and still trying to find ways to balance it early, get the run game going, get a couple early scores, and really take away the time of possession. I think if the Bucs win the time of possession battle and they're able to get over like 100, 120 yards rushing, that's going to be a key to victory for me.
Yeah, and let's remember that first drive against the Giants last
like
week.
8 minutes.
Yes, they scored an opening touchdown on the drive, but they also, as you see on the screen there, Sean Tucker was the one that punched it in. Yes, they took about 8.5 minutes on that opening drive, and that's very important. I certainly think it's more important against teams with high potent offenses like, the Ravens and the Chiefs and stuff like that, but beggars also can't be choosers. It's certainly a better offense that they're playing with the Carolina Panthers, but man, just you see how dynamic any team can be, and playing action still works even when you have a bad running team. But when you can move the ball pretty well, it wasn't like the Bucs were ripping off 15 yards per carry, which essentially they were when they beat the Saints in that game a couple of weeks ago in New Orleans. But when you know that you have the utmost confidence that you can get any first down, whether you run it or throw it, it just does so much for this team. I mean, Baker, who's had a lot of time to throw, and credit to the offensive line, Baker's doing some great things. He's running when he needs to, but he's not running all the time. It's not always out of necessity. Like, sure, sometimes the defense comes up with a good play and coverage, and, Baker's the one that keeps the drive going. I think one of my favorite drives from that Giants game was when Baker and the offense was essentially in their own end zone, and he scrambled 15 yards to get the first down. Maybe it wasn't 15 yards, but he scrambled enough to get the first down. I think Rachaad White is going to play a big role in this game because the Panthers may focus too much on Mike Evans for the fact that, hey, Dave Canales has seen how Mike Evans can torch a defense, and specifically the Panthers defense. And if they can't get a pass rush going, we'll see what's up with Tristan Wirfs. But Justin School did a great job. Luke Gedeke continues to do a great job. If the Panthers aren't getting a pass rush, I don't know how they're going to stop the Buccaneers. I think this is another game where, pay attention to Peter picks and props. I think this is another game where the Bucs, on their own on offense, will be able to score 30 points. I think you make some great cases for the Bucs struggling in the past, but the overall health of Baker Mayfield, I think, makes a huge difference. And again, we're talking about the last 2 years, having a team that could not run the football at all and was 32nd in the league. Now they're a top 10 running team. So it doesn't matter if it's Bucky Irving. It doesn't matter if it's Rachaad White. They can just attack you in so many ways where even if you don't have Chris Godwin and you're really getting poor production from your other wide receivers. Now, they were able to get spot moments from everybody last game, whether it was Trey Palmer with a first down catch, Jalen McMillan as well, Payne Durham getting in the mix.
Yep.
When
Cade
you have
Otton.
Mike Evans back, Cade Otton, of course, when you have Mike Evans who takes a ton of attention, and that was the big thing last year too, right? It was like everybody knew Mike was going to get the ball, but when you just took Mike out of the game, there was, they couldn't run it. Sure, you had Chris Godwin, but there weren't many other options. If you want to put all your focus on Mike Evans, then fine. The Bucs will just continue to run it. And for the most part, they were great in short yardage. I know they didn't get it at the end, but they've been showing that they can run it in short yardage. They can do the play action. The play action has been flawless, pretty much. And even when maybe they're not completing a pass, Mike Evans is drawing a pass interference penalty. And we have this comment from Richard Taroka who says, I heard Mike Evans has drawn the most pass interference penalties ever. Yes, that is true. With the pass interference that he drew in the end zone against the Giants at MetLife Stadium, he passed Randy Moss for the most pass interference yards in NFL history. I think it's at 874. I know it's at 800.
Yeah, it's in the 800s.
So just an incredible job by Mike Evans. And, let's be real. The Panthers' defense allows a lot of points. Now, and sure, the offense played a part in that with a lot of turnovers early in the season. But don't be fooled by the fact that they looked better against the Giants and they looked better against the Saints the week before that they beat the Giants. Because the Saints, it was Spencer Rattler. It was, right when Rashid Shaheed got hurt and they were dealing with a bunch of injuries. And then the Giants, as we saw, doesn't matter if it's Daniel Jones, doesn't matter if it's Tommy DeVito. I may actually take the Giants plus 3.5 on Thanksgiving if Drew Lock is going to play. But the Giants have the worst offense in the league. So a tip of the cap for the Panthers for getting it together against the worst offense in the league. Now you're going with I'm not going to say the best offense in the league. That's certainly not the case. But certainly a top 15 offense. And I don't think Carolina can hang with Tampa Bay in that aspect specifically.
And I think there's a key factor to remember when you kind of talk about the Bucs offense. You know who they're not going up against this year? Derek Brown. And Brown is probably the best defensive player that the Panthers have. He's been out for a year with a knee injury, but he played really well in the 2 games last year. I remember the last game specifically, I think he led the team in tackles, had a sack, and he was a big game wrecker up front. And the Bucs don't even have to account for him this time around. So when you look at the different ways for the offense to get involved, it does pose a question that I want to ask you, Matt. It was something I think Rick Stroud asked it today about Bucky Irving and his usage going forward. Are you comfortable with where Bucky Irving kind of is? Because he's getting about 12 carries a game, 5-6 receptions. Is that the best way to keep him productive throughout the year? Or do you think the Bucs could maybe increase his workload a little bit more?
I think they can increase it with the rushing attempts. Now, I know he had a great, receiving game, but before that, you had games where it's like 2 catches for 12 yards. So I think a lot of times for running backs, it's more happenstance, situations. I still think Rachaad White is the better receiving running back and has that good vision after catching the ball and kind of seeing where the defenders are all over the place versus when you're running the football and it's, everyone's in the box and, you see the game a little bit differently. But I would for sure, while keeping everybody involved, like I don't think Bucky and Rachaad White have to have the same amount of rushing attempts. If they want to have the same amount of playing time on the field, absolutely. But if it's crunch time and it's a big moment, and say it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, whatever, Rachaad White should, if it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, Bucky Irving should be on the field. If you're running the football, you're running the football. He should be on every single time. He just has this crazy ability. It's uncanny, really, to just fall forward. And whatever tackle is coming on, he either breaks it or he makes you tackle it a yard forward versus a yard behind. Or he dodges it, or he has the big run that he had. But he's always moving forward. He's always breaking tackles. Rachaad White's a solid running back, but we kind of saw that in the game against the Giants at the end. And the game was at hand. So, it wasn't the end of the world that they didn't get it. But it was a 3rd and 2 and then a 4th and 1. They ran it twice with Rachaad White. And I get it. Rachaad White has been screwed over a little bit this season with certain plays when he is in, getting poor blocking up the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
But if Bucky's in there, again, he's a little bit smaller, a little bit tougher to corral. I can't help but think Bucky maybe gets stopped on that 3rd and 2, but gets the first down on 4th and 1. As far as pure runners, Bucky Irving's the best. You could say Sean Tucker is second, and then it's Rachaad White. And again, this is not disparaging Rachaad White. He is important to this team. He is their best pass blocker. For everything I said about if it's 3rd and 4th and 1, I want Bucky Irving in the game. If it's a 3rd and 10 and you need a first down to keep the game going, to keep your season
you'd put
alive,
in Rachaad White.
I want Rachaad White in the game. So that's not to say that Rachaad White is not important to this team. He's very important to this team. And I love that the Bucs have figured out what the rest of the league does already, which is you can have 2 really good running backs and get the best out of most of them. I think people are still kind of trained, maybe because either fantasy football or the way the NFL used to be 15 years ago, that it's just got to be one guy doing everything. And it kind of sucks for fantasy football because you're like, which running back am I going to start on what team? That doesn't have to be the case. You can be very, very successful. I mean, we've seen the Chiefs over and over again, find success with several running backs. Yes, they have their main guy with Pacheco. I know he was hurt this year, but he has been their main guy. The 49ers have figured it out. I know their win-loss record isn't great, but running the football, they didn't have Christian McCaffrey until they played against the Bucs. And Jordan Mason, their backup, did great.
He was 3rd in the league in rushing.
Exactly. So, there's so many different ways to attack a team. There's different ways to get everybody involved. I love the pony package. I would like to see more of the pony package. Everyone's going to be important, but it's certainly a good question of who should they use more? If you don't want to go 12 and 12, make it rushing attempts. I mean, let Bucky get 15 versus 12. Let him get 17, 18 and still keep Rachaad running the football as well. But it's at this point, there's a big enough sample size that everyone can agree and say Bucky's the guy when it comes to running the football.
Yeah, I'd agree. And you make some sound arguments there. And just kind of want to say, when you look at running backs now, you kind of see the last of the workhorses and guys like Derrick Henry. I mean, you still have Saquon Barkley, who gets a lot of touches, and the Christian McCaffreys of the world. But what is really efficient is having 2 running backs kind of split that workload. It's kind of like in baseball, and you have a stacked bullpen and a starting pitcher. You only need the starting pitcher to go maybe 5 innings, and the bullpen can do the rest. It's kind of the same with the running back and the ways to kind of keep him fresh throughout the season.
I kind of want Sean Tucker, too, to be that closing guy. Remember, the game against the Saints when he was NFC Offensive Player of the Week, he did most of his damage. Yeah, goal line for sure. But what I kind of meant a little more was use him in the 4th quarter. Get him involved in the game a little bit so he's not just sitting cold until the 4th quarter. But he did most of his damage against the Saints in the 4th quarter. He got 100 rushing yards, and you can't expect that every single time. But just having a fresh running back ready to go against a tired defense, I think that would be a good idea for sure. But I love the hard work that all 3 of these running backs have really put in. And if you want people working hard for your money, there's nobody better to work with than Muni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude,
Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Muni Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you with so many different things like legacy and retirement planning, insurance services, annuities, sales and trading. They can set up a college account as well for your kid if they want to go to school. and it can help you manage your money in so many different ways. And they have places all over, not just in Tampa, not just in Colorado. You could be up in Oregon, where Bucky Irving went to school. You can be in Arizona, or Arizona State, where Rashad White went to school. You could be up in Syracuse, where Sean Tucker went, or maybe be in North Carolina, where the game will be taking place on Sunday between the Bucs and the Panthers. So give them a call, get a free consultation, and see how Immuni Financial can help you. Want to get to a couple of other comments. Jeff the Champ said, basically just play good situational football. Yeah, that goes a long way, especially with the fundamentals. Mr. Wright says, hot take, Mike Edwards is going to do great, and he's going to get an extension at the end of the year. I could see him, if he ends up like getting a couple interceptions or something like that, maybe getting like a 2-year contract, which I think even he would sign up for, because he'd be doing it in a small sample size. So it's not like, wow, look at this great season he's had.
Yeah.
Like, he's only done it for like 6 or 7 games. And since he left the Bucs, he's only been signing 1-year deals. So he hasn't totally had that, job security that I think a lot of players want with being under contract for a number of years.
Yeah, and it kind of makes it interesting when you look at the safety position, because a couple weeks ago you might say the safety position was a need for the team, like going into next year. But if Edwards plays well down the stretch, they may have kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone, where you bring in a safety to kind of take over for Whitehead for now, but then also next year you kind of have the third safety again on Edwards, and you know what he's capable of, and then pairing him alongside the other 2, it could be a value signing that has some long-term implications.
For sure, especially if like Christian Izzy comes back. Obviously, you have Tyke Smith under contract and Winfield. You pretty much have the whole secondary group back. Yeah, Tavir Thomas, great special teams. You'd have the whole group. I mean, obviously, there's a lingering decision that the Bucs will have with Jamel Dean, but I mean, if they keep winning, maybe the Bucs keep Jamel Dean, even with his overall injury history. So that is something to certainly keep in mind of as eventually, whenever the offseason comes through. Peter 941 says, he's talking about Jordan Whitehead here. Wouldn't it be better to put him on injured reserve until he is ready? It depends on how long that he's going to be out for. And I saw your comment before where you're like, well, what's the point if it's like, if he misses the next 2 or 3 games? Well, injured reserve automatically puts you on for 4 games. You have to sit out those 4. You got to remember, like, they didn't put Mike Evans on injured reserve, because that was the other thing Peter 941 had mentioned, like him taking up a roster spot. It does take up a roster spot, but they've done this before with Mike Evans. They did it with Luke Gedeke, where, they wanted to see if they can get them back in time. Now, with Gedeke, what did he miss? 4? So I guess technically they could have put him on injured reserve, but there was the hope that he would be able to come back earlier. With Mike Evans, and thanks to the bye week, they were able to get him back earlier. So I think that would be the reason why they wouldn't put him on injured reserve, is if they do think they can get him back by that 4th game specifically. And if he ends up being out 4 games anyway, and it does take up a roster spot, well, that's why you have
the end of the world.
Yeah, that's why you have depth with Edwards returning and Christian Izzy and stuff like that. So I think that was important as well to just be aware of, the same way that I want everybody to be aware of the great happy hour things that they have going on at Immuni Financial.
What an amazing...
Sorry, I meant walk-ons.
What an amazing comeback, Coach.
You're not kidding. I mean, we did lose the game badly, but coming to walk-ons afterward, the team got a much-needed win off the field.
Walk-ons for the win.
That's right. Shout out to walk-ons. They have so many fantastic deals. They got happy hour all the time, including all day on Tuesdays with $5 Tito's. You can go there tonight as well. They have it from 3 to 6 and then 9 till close. Thursday, obviously, is Thanksgiving, but you can do Friday from 3 to 6 as well. Fantastic deals like $3 happy hour pours, $4 house wines, and then some great starters like the small waffle cheese fries, the boom boom shrimp queso dip, and the boneless wings. The weekend, great for football. A lot of rivalry games coming up. You got Florida, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Nebraska. What else do we got? Georgia, Georgia Tech. What else am I missing? What's the other big one? Auburn, Alabama. So tons of great, the Iron Bowl, as they call it. So a lot of great rivalry games coming up. You can watch it over at Walk-Ons on Saturday and Sunday. If you want to watch the Bucs game there on Sunday, they got 449 pints, 22-ounce drinks for $5.99 of Mick Ultra, Bud Light, and Budweiser, Michelob Ultra, that is. You also have $5 Heineken Silvers and $5 Neutrals. So get on over to Walk-Ons. They have 3 locations, one in Lakeland, one in Wesley Chapel by Scott, and one in Midtown close to myself, and Raymond James Stadium where the Bucs play. So shout out to our friends over at Walk-Ons. Wanted to get to one more comment that I saw from Edwin Hernandez. Maybe we'll squeeze in one more as well. Yeah, we'll get to one more as well. Edwin says, if we get the running game working early, then that can open up the passing game as well. Yeah, if you're able to run, you can do just about anything, especially in this Liam Cohen offense.
Yeah, and especially getting it going early, it opens up so much as the game goes on. Like you mentioned, like Sean Tucker in the Saints game, like he was virtually unstoppable. And just like when you have a solid run game that's able to get 5-6 yards a pop, that opens up the second downs, the third downs, where Baker Mayfield, he kind of talked about today, he's completed over 70% of his passes this year, just a lot of it based on efficiency. And if the run game's going, he doesn't have to force the issue and do too much otherwise than just kind of working the quick game and out routes. So it can't be understated just how much a good running game really opens up the pass game. And all told, that's why the Bucs have had such a good offense this year.
And it's another example of being able to beat teams in different ways, which I think is important. Jeff the Champ says, we've seen it work out in the past with these DBs, and now they've added even more talent. Yeah, it's a little bit of whack-a-mole, right? Like one guy gets hurt, someone else comes back, then someone else gets hurt. So, that's always been a little tough. Timothy Fitzgerald says, White is great in the open field, little swing passes and screens. Yeah, again, keep Rachaad White as your receiving running back. Let Bucky Irving be your rushing running back. I think that's the best way to do it.
And kind of looking at the previous comment talking about the defensive backs, I wanted to ask you, Matt, kind of a betting question here. And Peter, people, feel free to chime in. Who would you bet would be the next member of the secondary to get an interception? Do you think it's Antoine Winfield Jr., Zion McCollum? If Tyke comes back, Mike Edwards? I mean, there's a lot of options there.
I honestly think it's Mike Edwards. He has that ball hawking nature. He already came close against the Giants, like I mentioned before. He's the guy that just has a knack for finding the football. What about you? What do you think?
I would say Mike Edwards too, and kind of like he came in last week, played really well, had an outstanding game based on the circumstances. Another week in the system, I think he kind of makes a play. He came so close. I think he might get it. Another option, though, you can't go wrong with a guy like Zion McCollum, who's already come away with a couple this year.
No, you cannot. He's been great this year, and you can't go wrong either with the Autograph app, of course, which was founded by Tom Brady on the belief that devotion should be rewarded, and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. This isn't a Pewter Report app, but it's an app where you can read Pewter Report and other Bucs news and other sports as well, like the NBA, WNBA, baseball, fantasy football, and NCAA sports. It's great on it's available and great on Androids and iPhones, and it's all about you, the fans, rewarding fans for your overall fandom. So you can read Pewter Report, watch our videos and podcasts, and get rewarded all in one free app with the Autograph app. Sign up using the promo code Pewter. That's PEWTER. One last comment to get to, a fun one. We can answer this one pretty quickly from Richard, who says, Matt and Sly, this is Richard Taroka. Matt and Sly, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food you're looking forward to? Adam, you can go first.
All right, I'm going to go with 2 here. I like a nice honey glazed ham. Looking forward to that. But the cranberries, I think, is a very versatile, underrated one where you can really put it on anything, put it on some turkey, mixes in good with mashed potatoes. Those would be my 2.
My favorite, hands down, every year is stuffing. Absolutely love stuffing. It's my favorite side. I love, too, like, the meal itself, but then when you get the leftovers, you can do a sandwich and you can mix the stuffing in there as well. So very much looking forward. It's the best. It's one of the best holidays ever, but stuffing is one of the best sides ever as well. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. We're so grateful and thankful for you all. And thank you so much for your support of pewterreport.com. So for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.